Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Local totals from all 382 voting areas have now been certified and announced, and I have therefore been able to certify the result of the referendum on the UK's membership of the European Union. As Chief Counting Officer for the referendum on the UK's membership of the European Union, held on the 23rd of June 2016, I hereby give notice that I have certified the following. The total number of ballot papers counted was 33,577,342. The total number of votes cast in favour of Remain was 16,141,241. The total number of votes cast in favour of Leave was 17,410,742. This means that the UK has voted to leave the European Union.
Accepting the result, obviously. The country has been divided, but it's made a decision. We now have to organise how we leave the European Union, but crucially, how we develop a strong economic relationship with Europe and indeed other parts of the world. A very large number of jobs rely on that.
Even the island communities who voted against the European Union in 1975, every single area has voted Remain. So we've got a united country in Scotland who wants to be part of Europe. And in the manifesto it said if Scotland was dragged out of Europe against the will of the Scottish people, then the Scottish Parliament should have the right to hold another independence referendum.
Policy makers and the British voters have to know that there will be no kind of any renegotiation. We have concluded a deal with the Prime Minister. He got the maximum he could receive and we gave the maximum we could give, so there will be no kind of renegotiation, nor on the agreement we have found, I think, in February, nor as far as any kind of treaty negotiation are concerned. Out is out.
The vote in the UK doesn't change our economic fundamentals here. So like the Treasurer and like the Prime Minister, we urge people to be calm and not to necessarily confuse the volatility in the stock market with any greater economic shift or proposition in Australia's fundamentals. We have requested a briefing from the appropriate government officials and departments, APRA, the Reserve Bank and Treasury. We've requested that briefing in writing. I acknowledge that in the caretaker period that these agencies and organisations have already been briefing the opposition as they have the government.
Ce référendum sur l'appartenance de la France à l'Union européenne est une nécessité démocratique. Les Français doivent pouvoir choisir eux aussi cette voie de liberté qui rendra à la France sa pleine et entière souveraineté.
Good morning, everyone. The country has just taken part in a giant democratic exercise, perhaps the biggest in our history. Over 33 million people from England, Scotland, Wales, Northern Ireland and Gibraltar have all had their say. We should be proud of the fact that in these islands we trust the people with these big decisions. We not only have a parliamentary democracy, but on questions about the arrangements for how we're governed, there are times when it is right to ask the people themselves, and that is what we have done. The British people have voted to leave the European Union, and their will must be respected. I want to thank everyone who took part in the campaign on my side of the argument, including all those who put aside party differences to speak in what they believed was the national interest. And let me congratulate all those who took part in the Leave campaign for the spirited and passionate case that they made. The will of the British people is an instruction that must be delivered. It was not a decision that was taken lightly, not least because so many things were said by so many different organisations about the significance of this decision. I fought this campaign in the only way I know how, which is to say directly and passionately what I think and feel, head, heart and soul. I held nothing back. I was absolutely clear about my belief that Britain is stronger, safer and better off inside the European Union. And I made clear the referendum was about this and this alone, not the future of any single politician, including myself. But the British people have made a very clear decision to take a different path. And as such, I think the country requires fresh leadership to take it in this direction. I will do everything I can as Prime Minister to steady the ship over the coming weeks and months. But I do not think it would be right for me to try to be the captain that steers our country to its next destination. This is not a decision I've taken lightly, but I do believe it's in the national interest to have a period of stability and then the new leadership required. There is no need for a precise timetable today, but in my view we should aim to have a new Prime Minister in place by the start of the Conservative Party conference in October. Delivering stability will be important, and I will continue in post as Prime Minister with my Cabinet for the next 3 months. The Cabinet will meet on Monday. The Governor of the Bank of England is making a statement about the steps that the Bank and the Treasury are taking to reassure financial markets.
Well, I think all of us who believe in Europe and want to be part of Europe will be deeply disappointed that effectively English votes have dragged us out of Europe. Quite significantly, the people of the North and the people of Scotland voted overwhelmingly to remain in Europe. And of course there's been concerns since the referendum was announced, and I had said on quite a number of occasions that I believed that there was a very clear UKIP agenda, but also a right-wing agenda within the Conservative Party, a little Englander mentality, which was about getting a referendum and achieving the result that they effectively have achieved overnight. So I think the holding of the referendum in the first instance was David Cameron's biggest mistake. And I said on a number of occasions that I thought that David Cameron was sleepwalking into taking us out of Europe, and that has come to pass. But I want to express my thanks and appreciation to all those unionists, nationalists and Republicans who voted to achieve a percentage of 56% here in the North to remain in Europe. That was a very significant vote. And obviously there will be a lot of attention turned to what Scotland will do. Scotland have made the argument in the past that in the event of a Brexit that they would go for another referendum. Well, I think that our case for a border poll is also strengthened by the outcome of this vote, and the fact that the overwhelming majority of people in the North voted to remain. Well, I never hear anybody accusing Nicola Sturgeon of being opportunistic whenever she suggests that there should be a poll into Scottish independence. So why should that apply to us? No, I think that given that we have seen in the course of this exercise the people of the North vote to a percentage of 56% to remain in the European Union, that it is the next logical step, and I do think that the case for it has been strengthened. There is absolutely no reason whatsoever that it would be destabilising. I don't know why people suggest that, because it is part of the Good Friday Agreement. It is a legitimate exercise that can be conducted, just as the exercise into Scottish independence was conducted in a very civilised way. I see absolutely no reason whatsoever why a border poll referendum and lead into it similarly could not be conducted in a civilised way.
We got our country back! Good. Good morning, everybody. The sun has risen on an independent, united kingdom, And just look at it, even the weather's improved. And the first election I contested, I managed to beat the late great screaming Lord Such. It's a victory for ordinary people, decent people. It's a victory against the big merchant banks, against the big businesses and against big politics. And I'm proud of everybody that had the courage, in the face of all the threats, everything they were told, they had the guts to stand up and do the right thing. Decent people. It's a victory against the big merchant banks, against the big businesses and against big politics. And the EU's failing, the EU's dying. I hope we've knocked the first brick out of the wall. I hope this is the first step towards a Europe of sovereign nation states, trading together, neighbours together, friends together, but without flags, anthems or useless old unelected presidents. Why doesn't the government come and see what they've done to my community, what they've done to the prospects for my kids in those areas? There is still a massive disconnect between Westminster. We now need a Brexit government, a government that gets on with the job, a government that begins the renegotiation of our trade relationship, a government that will be mindful that already many of the German car manufacturing unions have said, let's get on and do a deal. Let's go on buying, selling motor cars and wine and cheese with each other. But a government also that at the same time uses the opportunity of Brexit. And the opportunity is we're now freed to start making our own trade deals and associations with the rest of the world. Step towards a Europe of sovereign nation states trading together. And the other thing I think that needs to happen is that June the 23rd needs to become a national bank holiday, and we will call it Independence Day. Martin Schultz, to join a Brexit government? You want to join a Brexit government? Come on, Crick. Come on, Cricky. You want to join a Brexit government?
Bye-bye, Juncker!
Bye-bye, Juncker.
Good morning. There's no hiding the fact that we wanted a different outcome of yesterday's referendum. I am fully aware of how serious or even dramatic this moment is politically, and there's no way of predicting all the political consequences of this event, especially for the UK. It is a historic moment, but for sure not a moment for hysterical reactions. I want to reassure everyone that we are prepared also for this negative scenario. As you know, the EU is not only a fair weather project. Over the past 2 days I have spoken to all the EU leaders, I mean prime ministers and presidents, as well as heads of the EU institutions, about the possibility of a Brexit. Today, on behalf of the 27 leaders, I can say that we are determined to keep our unity as 27. For all of us, the Union is the framework for our common future. I would also like to reassure you that there will be no legal vacuum. Until the United Kingdom formally leaves the European Union, EU law will continue to apply to and within the UK. And by this I mean rights as well as obligations. All the procedures for the withdrawal of the UK from the EU are clear and set out in the treaties. In order to discuss the details of further proceedings, I have offered the leaders an informal meeting of the 27 in the margins of the European Council Summit. And I will also propose to the leaders that we start a wider reflection on the future of our Union. Finally, it's true that the past years have been the most difficult ones in the history of our Union, but I always remember what my father used to tell me: what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. Thank you.
Wir wollen ein Signal setzen, dass mit dem britischen Austritt die Europäische Union noch lange nicht am Ende ist, vor allem nicht die europäische Idee, sondern wir kämpfen weiter. Gerade die junge Generation hat auch in Großbritannien für den Verbleib gestimmt und wir wollen zeigen, dass die Jugend für Europa kämpft.
Es ist schade, dass die Briten die Europäische Union verlassen werden. Auf der anderen Seite muss man natürlich sehen, es ist ein starkes demokratisches Signal und es zeigt auch, dass offensichtlich in der EU einiges nicht so läuft, wie es laufen sollte. Ich hoffe, die EU nimmt dieses Zeichen von Großbritannien als einen Neubeginn für Reformen und dass sich die EU so aufstellt, dass sie auch tatsächlich wieder zukunftsfähig wird.
Ladies and gentlemen, dare to dream that the dawn is breaking on an independent, united kingdom. If the predictions now are right, this will be a victory for real people, a victory for ordinary people, a victory for decent people. We have fought against the multinationals, we fought against the big merchant banks, we fought against big politics, we fought against lies, corruption and deceit, and today honesty, decency and belief in nation, I think now is going to win. And we will have done it. We will have done it without having to fight, without a single bullet being fired. We'd have done it by damned hard work on the ground, by people like my friend Mr. Banks here. And by people in the Labour Party and the Conservative Party and UKIP and of no party who've taken part in this campaign. And we'll have done it not just for ourselves, we'll have done it for the whole of Europe. I hope this victory brings down this failed project and leads us to a Europe of sovereign nation states trading together, being friends together, cooperating together, and let's get rid of the flag, the anthem, Brussels and all that has gone wrong. Let June the 23rd go down in our history as our Independence Day.
It's unbelievable, isn't it?
I can tell Reuters television that whilst we've got to wait for the final results, it looks like the real people, ordinary people, decent people have overturned the establishment at last. And perhaps we'll get back not just our democracy for this country, but for the whole of the rest of Europe too.
Nigel, can I ask you, is it immigration that has won it, or is it a revolt against elites across Europe?
I don't think that people in Westminster, that people who've got money and privilege, have any comprehension of what they've done to the lives of ordinary, decent people. And my one enduring image of this referendum will be the day in Bolton when a lady grabbed my hands and said, why doesn't David Cameron come and see what he's done to our lives? And I could add to that Gordon Brown and Tony Blair. Irresponsible, open-door mass immigration has damaged the quality of life of ordinary, decent people in this country.
Now you were ostracised by the official Vote Leave campaign. They said you were Marmite and you talked too much about immigration, and then they started talking about immigration.
Well, they're SW1 types, Eton and Oxford. They don't know the real world. I'm delighted that a lot of them came out on our side, but I don't think they speak to people in Bolton, and I think our campaign did.
Talking about Eton, if you have won it, should the Prime Minister resign?
Immediately. Partly because that's where I spent my time in this referendum campaign, but also because it shows this incredible disconnect between SW1, Westminster, wealth, multinationals, merchant banks and ordinary people, living out there, doing their best, but actually having a pretty rotten time of it.
What's Nigel Farage going to do now?
Celebrate.
But after that, do you want to be in a Tory UKIP government, a Boris Johnson government?
I suspect this party's going to take some getting over. Ask me in a few days.
Yeah, I do.
Excuse me, guys, can we get a drink? Thank you.